In my 15 years as an attorney, I've met thousands of clients. Each carried their own unique pain, despair, and internal conflict, often dragged into the abyss by cruel reality and base desires. Among them, an elderly couple from Manhattan and their daughter left the deepest impression on me. I still remember, it was a rainy afternoon in June 2019. The rain was pouring down on Manhattan. From my office on the 21st floor, the usually bustling streets and commercial area were almost empty. For me, it was a rare moment of peace. I was about to choose a book to kill time when my secretary, Miss Taylor, knocked and entered. "Attorney, an elderly couple wants to see you urgently." Shortly after, Mr. Robert Johnson and Mrs. Eleanor Johnson sat before me. Robert, the husband, spoke first, his voice shaky. "Attorney Smith, I need your help to file for my daughter's divorce." "Where is your daughter? Why didn't she come with you?" I asked. My seemingly simple question made the couple visibly uneasy. After a long moment, Eleanor slowly answered, "Our daughter is currently hospitalized. It's not convenient for her to meet strangers. Her situation is a bit special." Their evasive attitude piqued my curiosity. The whole ordeal seemed to trace back to their daughter, Sarah Johnson's, childhood. Born in the 1980s, Sarah was, according to her parents, a normal child until one day in 1990 when she suddenly complained of severe stomach pain. Initially, the Johnsons thought it was just indigestion, but when Sarah began experiencing intense, relentless pain, vomiting, and diarrhea for over an hour, they rushed her to the nearest hospital. Strangely, despite numerous tests, doctors couldn't find the cause. Just as they were about to transfer her to a larger facility, Sarah's pain vanished completely. She was cheerful again, as if nothing had happened. Eleanor whispered her fears to Robert. "Do you think our child might be possessed?" Robert, a kind and mild-mannered man, merely comforted his wife, telling her not to imagine things. But from then on, Sarah experienced this bizarre attack once or twice a year, severe cramping, cold sweats, and no medication helped. The pain only subsided after receiving intravenous glucose or saline solution. For several years, the couple took Sarah to various hospitals for extensive tests, but the results were always the same, because unknown, temporary treatment only. Since she was young and looked outwardly normal, they tried to dismiss it as severe digestive issues. Under her parents' meticulous care, the abdominal pain eventually disappeared for several years. Then, in 1994, another strange event occurred. Sarah started showing signs of paranoia, constantly believing others were mocking her. Sometimes she would feel an inexplicable discomfort in her neck and back, then burst into unprompted laughter and flail her arms. The Johnsons initially dismissed it as typical teenage mischief, until one morning, Eleanor slipped and fell on the wet kitchen floor while cooking. As she looked up, she was horrified to see her daughter standing in the doorway, staring coldly at her, then letting out a chilling, cackling laugh. The sound sent shivers down her spine. Eleanor immediately called her husband home. The couple began to suspect their daughter was mentally ill. That April, they took Sarah to a psychiatric center. The initial diagnosis was hypochondriasis, not yet confirmed as schizophrenia because she was still young and the symptoms were not fully distinct. Sarah began medication and her condition stabilized. Believing she was cured after her release, her parents made the decision to stop the medication themselves. "If only we had listened to the doctor then and hadn't stopped the medicine," Robert told me, his voice full of regret. Sarah was stable for 5 years after stopping the medication. Then, in 1999, her personality suddenly shifted. She became easily angered, prone to arguments, and even got into fights with classmates. When the school called the parents in, the Johnsons lectured Sarah. That night, while her parents were sleeping, Sarah secretly mixed cosmetics and household materials into a makeshift Molotov cocktail, lit it, and threw it onto their bed, screaming that she wanted to die along with them. Fortunately, Robert woke up just in time, averting a tragedy. From that day on, the couple was terrified of their own daughter. Eleanor suffered from constant nightmares, weeping, "I'm living in hell." Later that year, Sarah's illness worsened dramatically. She smashed a beer bottle against her own head and used a knife to slash her face. When teachers asked about the wounds, she nonchalantly replied, "My parents hit me." The teachers, suspicious, contacted the parents, Upon learning the truth, they immediately took Sarah back to the psychiatric center. This time, the doctor confirmed the diagnosis, schizophrenia. Despite continuous treatment, the illness recurred frequently with fits of rage, paranoia, and agitation. By 2000, she began experiencing auditory hallucinations. In 2005, she falsely accused her father of associating with drug dealers and even called the police. She then definitively refused to take her medication, flushing the pills her parents prepared down the toilet. After stopping the medication, her condition quickly deteriorated. She often saw shadow figures looming over her, heard voices calling her name, saw her own hands transform into monsters, and believed other people's eyes were bleeding. She said her mind felt like it was on fire, constantly populated by ghosts and demons. Reluctantly, her parents took her in for treatment for the third time. As Elena recounted these details in my office, she couldn't hold back her tears. I offered them 2 cups of warm water. Robert thanked me repeatedly, then pulled out several photos of Sarah, a young girl with braided hair, a pretty face, holding a can of orange soda, smiling brightly. I asked them to continue, needing every detail. Robert said, although her illness is terrifying, it doesn't strike all the time. When she's lucid, she lives like a normal person. She even held part-time jobs. I later reviewed Sarah's online chat history and discovered that when lucid, she was acutely aware of her condition and despised her illness. She had repeatedly sought advice from online doctors about cures, desperately wishing to integrate into society. But that hope was crushed when a man named Daniel Hayes appeared. When she was younger, due to her mental condition, Sarah had been sexually abused by a few local thugs. Since then, whenever she had an episode, she would lose control of her sexual behavior, often running outside and telling strangers she wanted to get married. She would even declare, "If anyone marries me, my parents will give them a house, a car, and a dowry of tens of thousands of dollars." To prevent their daughter from being exploited, the Johnsons and their neighbors were always vigilant about anyone getting too close to her, but they missed one loophole: the internet. In 2018, Sarah met Daniel Hayes, a man from rural Ohio, online. After only 1 month, he successfully lured her into stealing her own birth certificate and personal documents and traveling alone to Ohio to get married. The entire process was like a hypnotic trance. Daniel constantly sweet-talked her, making her believe that marrying him was the key to a happy life. One day, Sarah told her parents she wanted to go on a trip with her friend, Amy Miller. Robert initially objected, but thinking his daughter was stable and Amy was trustworthy, and wanting Sarah to relax after years of illness, he agreed. This single lapse in judgment led to unimaginable consequences. With her parents' consent, Sarah happily packed her bags and set off with Amy for Amy's hometown near Cleveland. On the bus, Sarah suddenly suffered an episode, talking wildly about private matters and trying to jump off the moving vehicle. The terrified driver was forced to drop them off on the side of the road. After taking her medication, Sarah calmed down. But upon arriving at Amy's house, Sarah had another episode, causing Amy's mother-in-law to angrily yell, "Why did you bring a crazy person to our house?" Stuck between her friend and her mother-in-law, Amy put Sarah on a train back to Manhattan. But as the train started, Sarah secretly slipped off at a midway stop, caught another train to Ohio to meet Daniel Hayes, and registered their marriage. At that moment, Sarah was completely immersed in the delusion of happiness, unaware that the true tragedy awaited her. After the wedding, she brought her husband back to Manhattan to meet her parents. The Johnsons were deeply shocked, but didn't immediately object. They thought they were getting old and couldn't care for Sarah forever. They decided that as long as Daniel treated Sarah well, even if he wasn't well educated or had a stable job, they would be willing to share their savings and house to help the couple settle down. To avoid complications, however, they took Sarah to undergo a sterilization procedure. But life didn't go as planned. Daniel Hayes only saw Sarah as a cash cow. After the marriage, his true nature gradually emerged. Previously, Daniel had worked as a construction worker with unstable work and low income. After marrying Sarah, he constantly fabricated excuses to demand money from the Johnsons. Initially, out of love for their daughter, the elderly couple indulged all of Daniel's demands. They even surrendered their subsidized housing unit to Daniel and Sarah, while they moved out and rented a small apartment. but Daniel's demands grew increasingly outrageous. After the Johnsons refused him, he even secretly used Sarah's phone to apply for loans from various financial companies, plunging her into massive debt. Daniel's greed was not the only dark aspect. The Johnsons could no longer tolerate his violent nature. One day, they accidentally discovered that Daniel had repeatedly beaten Sarah and even subjected her to cruel sexual abuse. The Johnsons tearfully placed Sarah's injury evaluation photos on my desk. Sarah's body was covered in bruises, her private areas were severely torn, and her face even had cigarette burn marks. I looked at those horrific pictures and thought to myself, if my own daughter had been abused like this, I don't know if I could restrain myself from harming the perpetrator. Under Daniel's constant beatings and verbal abuse, Sarah's illness became more severe, requiring repeated electroconvulsive therapy. Due to prolonged abuse, she lost all capacity for judgment and self-protection. I set the stack of photos down and asked, I understand the situation. You want me to file for divorce on your daughter's behalf, correct? The Johnsons nodded repeatedly. Attorney Smith, please help our daughter get a divorce. Don't let that scumbag torture her anymore. Robert's eyes were firm, though his hands trembled. The couple's goal was to legally terminate Sarah and Daniel's marriage. But in any divorce case, the division of marital assets is unavoidable. During my initial interview, I found that the couple had almost no income during the marriage. Daniel's living expenses were entirely provided by Sarah's parents. The Johnsons were adamant. They wanted none of Daniel's money. They were even willing to pay off the massive debts Daniel took out in Sarah's name. Just let him release our daughter. We will accept any condition. That statement raised my suspicion. How could two elderly people with meager pensions afford to support two people and pay off massive debts? After pressing them, they revealed the truth. The family had once owned a house that was subject to eminent domain, and they received a resettlement apartment along with a significant cash compensation. Sarah was one of the compensated parties. They reasoned that since Daniel was not a resident at that address and was not on the compensation list, the money had nothing to do with him. They planned to use the compensation money to pay the debts and treat Sarah after the divorce. They hadn't mentioned it to me because they thought the compensation was irrelevant to the divorce case. This detail immediately put me on high alert. After checking the records, I found that the compensation was issued during the legal marriage of Sarah and Daniel. This meant that if we only filed for divorce, Daniel could absolutely claim a marital share of the compensation fund. The Johnsons were already struggling to pay rent and manage debts. If Daniel were to be awarded a share of the compensation, they would not be able to pay off the debts and might even have to sell their only apartment, falling into homelessness. For a family already so fragile, this would be the final, fatal blow. I pondered for a moment, then stated, in this case, I strongly recommend that you file a petition for a declaration of marital annulment, not a divorce. I explained that divorce and annulment are completely different legal concepts. Divorce terminates a valid marriage through legal procedure. Annulment declares that the marriage was never legal from the start because it lacked the statutory conditions to be recognized. Though both end the spousal relationship, the legal nature and consequences are fundamentally different. In a divorce, the court must divide marital assets. In an annulment, the two parties never acquired spousal rights, such as communal property, rights to inheritance, or shared residency benefits. In other words, if the court declares the marriage void, the relationship never legally existed, and no property rights or obligations arise. I told them if the court accepts the petition and declares the marriage between Sarah and Daniel void, he cannot touch the compensation money. Furthermore, a ruling for annulment is a final judgment. He has no right to appeal. The Johnsons were silent for a moment, then nodded firmly. Their daughter was their ultimate limit. They had trusted a stranger with her, but when she was harmed, they were ready to risk everything for justice. Now, my job was to help Sarah terminate her bond with Daniel and preserve the family's last chance at survival. With the legal directions set, I saw the elderly couple out, then went to the balcony to light a cigarette. Despite 15 years in practice and witnessing every kind of human tragedy, I had to take a deep breath to calm myself and organize my thoughts for this case. I predicted that because of the substantial compensation money involved, Daniel Hayes would absolutely not accept the declaration of annulment. He would try to prove that Sarah was perfectly lucid and willing to marry him, that he didn't know she had a mental illness, and he might even claim the marriage had her parents' consent. Therefore, I needed thorough preparation. Legally, if one party suffers from an illness that medical science deems should preclude marriage, and the illness is not cured after the marriage is voidable. I studied the law and relevant case precedents. Based on the legal foundation of declaring a marriage void due to incapacity, I determined I needed to collect evidence across 4 critical periods. 1. Sarah's childhood, to prove she suffered from schizophrenia from an early age, with frequent relapses and requiring long-term medication. 2. Time of marriage registration, to prove she was experiencing an active episode at the time, rendering her marital consent legally invalid. 3. Post-marriage, to prove Daniel abused, coerced, and exploited her to take out loans in her name. 4. Current status, to prove her illness remains uncured and relapses periodically. The first, third, and fourth stages were relatively easy to prove. Sarah was currently in an inpatient psychiatric facility. Her complete medical records, from childhood to present, had been meticulously kept by her parents' unexpected saving grace. The only difficulty lay in the second stage: how to prove she was having an active episode at the exact time of the marriage registration. I contacted the neighborhood association for confirmation that Sarah was exhibiting abnormal mental behavior both before and after the marriage. I also gathered screenshots of her online chats where she asked doctors about her psychiatric condition. Yet I felt this evidence was not strong enough to sway the court. After much searching, I finally contacted Amy Miller, the friend who traveled with Sarah on the initial trip. Amy was the closest witness to the period around the marriage. If she agreed to testify that Sarah was having an active psychotic episode at that time, the case would have a decisive advantage. But when I approached Amy, she firmly refused to testify. She said, "I don't want to get involved in a lawsuit, and I definitely don't want to be seen as someone who broke up a marriage." This refusal put me in a difficult position, as her testimony was irreplaceable key evidence. The day of the first hearing arrived. As per regulations, I was not allowed to speak with the defendant privately before the trial. This was the first time I met Daniel Hayes. He looked like an ordinary, slightly gaunt, working-class youth. If I hadn't known the truth, I might have found it hard to believe this man was capable of the word abuse. In court, Daniel completely refuted the Lee's testimony. He claimed he had no idea Sarah suffered from a mental illness when they got married. He alleged he offered to meet her parents before the wedding, but Sarah insisted it wasn't necessary, so he didn't press the issue. About a month after the wedding, he discovered her secretly taking medication. Only after repeatedly asking did she admit to her psychiatric condition. "I was genuinely shocked," he claimed. "I felt tricked." Daniel insisted that he was the victim. According to his testimony, when she was lucid, Sarah was healthy, but whenever she had an episode, she would violently attack him, even forcing him into sexual acts. When he refused, she became hysterical and would run into the kitchen to throw boiling water at him. That's why he had to react and hit her. He even recounted an instance where he was smoking on the balcony, and Sarah snatched the cigarette and deliberately burned her own face, leaving him terrified. Daniel argued that every time Sarah had an episode, her personality changed, and her violent actions caused him severe distress, making his reaction unavoidable self-defense. His defense was smooth and full of calculated emotion. Had I not met the Johnsons, seen the medical records, and the cigarette burns on Sarah's body, I might have felt some sympathy for this man. During the questioning, the judge repeatedly interrupted Daniel, asking him to describe in detail how Sarah threw boiling water or burned her face during an episode. At first glance, it seemed the judge was starting to believe him. After all, in reality, most cases involve the sick person concealing their illness to marry, rarely the opposite situation where the sick person is exploited. I had anticipated Daniel's claim of ignorance regarding Sarah's illness before the marriage. I immediately countered in court, regardless of whether Daniel knew about Sarah's illness before the wedding. His actions of exploiting her to take out loans and physically abusing her were undeniable facts. However, Daniel seemed to sense the court's attitude was shifting in his favor. His demeanor changed entirely, from meek to aggressive. He stood up and challenged me. "You people have no right to represent Sarah in this lawsuit. I am her husband. I am her legal guardian. As long as I do not agree to the divorce, no one can terminate this marriage." His challenge to the Johnsons' guardianship caught me off guard. The judge seemed to agree, subtly signaling that the case's outcome might not be as we hoped. I immediately recognized that to win, the most crucial issue was establishing who Sarah's rightful legal guardian was. According to civil law, an individual suffering from a mental illness who has lost or has limited legal capacity must have a guardian determined in sequence: 1 spouse, 2 parents, 3 adult children, 4 close relatives, etc. By law, the spouse is the highest priority. Therefore, Daniel, as the husband, was legally considered the primary guardian, placing the parents second. However, Daniel was simultaneously the defendant, meaning he had a direct conflict of interest with the ward Sarah. The court might therefore rule that Robert Johnson was unqualified to represent his daughter and require a separate proceeding to redetermine guardianship, which would severely delay the case. I immediately objected in court. Daniel not only failed to fulfill his duty of care, but severely infringed upon Sarah's rights, clearly making him unqualified as a guardian. Furthermore, this was an annulment case, and the defendant, Daniel, had a direct adversarial interest with the ward. In practice, the parents of a mentally ill patient can absolutely serve as the legal representative for their child in litigation. Ultimately, the judge accepted my argument. After a preliminary investigation, the court declared a recess and postponed the trial to another date. I reassured that Johnson's many complex cases are not resolved in one day. Be patient. Hearing this, they breathed a sigh of relief. Before the second hearing, I prepared a large volume of evidence to prove that Sarah was experiencing an active episode at the time of the marriage registration, and that her illness remained uncured. This included 1. Marriage certificate, confirming time and location. 2. Medical summary and discharge papers, proving she had schizophrenia since childhood, multiple hospitalizations, and was never fully cured. 3. Records from the mental health center, proving she required long-term medication and lost behavioral control during episodes. 4. Screenshots of her online consultations before the marriage, where she expressed wanting to hold a knife and uncontrolled laughter, clear signs of an impending episode. 5. Affidavit from the neighborhood association confirming Sarah's abnormal mental state at the time. Despite this, I still felt that evidence was not strong enough to completely defeat Daniel's defense. I decided to try once more to convince Amy Miller, Sarah's close friend, to testify. I went with the Johnsons to Amy's house. After getting her consent, I showed her the online consultation records and the online loan documents Daniel took out in Sarah's name. I told her, "Your friend is not in the happy marriage you imagine. She is enduring a living hell. If you do not testify, this case will be missing the most crucial piece of the puzzle, and she may forever remain under Daniel's control." The Johnsons sat beside us, quietly wiping their tears, perhaps moved by the plight of the elderly couple. After several hours of conversation, Amy finally agreed to testify in court. Eleanor was so overwhelmed, she knelt down to thank Amy. Amy and I quickly helped her stand up. In the second hearing, Daniel Hayes reverted to his old tactics, attempting to garner the judge's sympathy. But I had changed my strategy, arranging the evidence according to the 5 stages of avoidable marriage I had identified. The medical records, affidavits, and physical evidence were all clear, solid, and factual. When it came to cross-examination, Daniel stubbornly claimed that all the plaintiff's evidence was fabricated. But when Amy Miller walked into the courtroom, I saw a fleeting look of utter astonishment and despair on his face. Perhaps he never imagined the friend who had refused to get involved would ultimately stand before the court to expose his crimes. Faced with Amy's testimony and the combined evidence, the judge leaned decisively toward our side. Amy recounted every detail of the day Sarah and Daniel registered their marriage, her psychotic episode on the bus, and her strange behavior. Her testimony, combined with the evidence I submitted, painted the complete picture of the truth. Leaving the courtroom, I glanced past Daniel Hayes. He sat with his head bowed in complete silence. Perhaps at that moment, he already knew his fate. Everything seemed to be going smoothly, but just before the verdict was delivered, the court unexpectedly received a phone call from Sarah. On the phone, she claimed she was cured and discharged from the hospital, and that she no longer wished to divorce Daniel Hayes. This news completely upended my entire plan. I immediately contacted the Johnsons and Sarah's primary physician. After verification, we found that Sarah had never left the hospital. It turned out Daniel had secretly snuck into the hospital, manipulated her into calling the court, and lied about being cured to destabilize the verdict. Fortunately, the plot was uncovered in time. I rushed to the hospital, confirmed she was still an inpatient, and had the doctor provide an official statement. I brought the document to the court, presenting the entire sequence of events to the judge. After checking, the court confirmed the call was made from a hospital phone number. The matter was clarified. After comprehensive consideration, the court issued its ruling, granting our request and officially declaring the marriage between Sarah and Daniel void. Upon hearing that their daughter was free from the scumbag and could start anew, the Johnsons were overwhelmed with joy. They came to my office to present a thank you plaque, expressing their gratitude repeatedly. Although Sarah was still undergoing treatment, they believed that one day she would recover, return home, and begin a new life. Watching the two elderly figures slowly supporting each other as they walked away, I was deeply moved. As parents, they only hoped their daughter could find someone reliable to lean on a natural desire, but they were too trusting of a stranger. Their blind tolerance and forgiveness ultimately caused their daughter serious physical and emotional harm. Sarah's case was unique. When lucid, she fully recognized how terrible the marriage was. But when having an episode, she was easily manipulated by Daniel, saying things contrary to her true will. This fluctuation made the trial extremely arduous. Individuals like Sarah are fragile and isolated during an active episode. They cannot protect themselves, and relying solely on a guardian is not enough. As an attorney, I constantly contemplate how to improve the law to better protect people like her. As for Daniel Hayes, whether he knew about his wife's illness before the wedding or not, he never had the right to exploit her for loans, nor did he have the right to beat and abuse her. His actions severely violated Sarah's property rights and bodily integrity, fundamental rights protected by law for all human beings. Whether impoverished or ill, nothing can ever justify another person's abuse. The case of Sarah Johnson closed, but somewhere out there, many others are enduring similar suffering. There are still parents as heartbroken and helpless as the Johnsons. I only hope that one day the world will no longer see Sarah Johnson being deceived and tormented, and no longer see parents despairingly watching their children drown in suffering. As a lawyer, I always hope for human kindness, but I also know never to overestimate the human heart.